Well, thank you for being here in person. And we're going to chat for just about 45 minutes. And then we are really lucky that Kate was able to join us tonight. So we're going to have a chance to meet Kate as well. And I also want to let you know, just a note before we get started, that you all have given us excellent feedback, that some of our fireside chats were going on a tad too long. So we worked really hard tonight to take in your questions ahead of time, and we're going to address them during the conversation. But if more questions arise as we're chatting, please just shoot them to me in an email, and I'll be sure to follow up with you or Andy. Andy will. So Andy, welcome. It's great to have you here.
Well, thank you for having me, Lindley. It's great. It's really great to have a chance to meet some people tonight and to be here with all of you. So thank you.
Yeah, and it's really good to see people live, for sure. Well, let's get started by starting at the beginning. So let's go back in time, and I'd love to know what drew you to education and to schools.
Wow. So education is really in my family. My father was a teacher, administrator, ended his career as a superintendent of public schools, and it was very much a part of who he was. So I was born into that. I can remember being a little boy walking around in the hallways of various schools that he worked in. Fond memories of, honestly, at the end of school year, cleaning out lockers. I know that sounds kind of strange, but there were great treasures in those lockers, pens and pencils and all kinds of notebooks and strange things that seemed really great for a little boy to be finding. But I could sense very early on that being a part of a community and a community of learners was important to my father, and was something that seemed, fun for me as I was growing up. Education's also just been, my extended family too. As I continue to grow up, I think people know and will hear more about my wife's family and their role in education. My mom was also a social worker, and that sense of giving back to the community and being a part of a community and serving others was something that I understood from an early age. But I think it was really in college when I realized that being a teacher was something I really wanted to do. I think like everyone in college, there were about 50 things that I thought I might want to do, but education just kept coming back to me as something that I was interested in. Having a chance to coach a kindergarten soccer team, for instance, in college with a good friend of mine, and just really paying attention to what great teachers were doing in the classroom and reflecting back to teachers that I had in elementary school and middle school and high school. I really just began to see that I enjoyed working with young people and wanted to pursue that. I will say I was a classics and religious studies major, so I had to try to figure out what that would look like in a school. And again, I was fortunate to find a place that really celebrated those two things early on for me as I was learning how to teach and learning how to grow as an educator. So.
Well, our Latin and classic study students will love to have you come drop in, for sure. Well, you have been at Roxbury Latin for 25 years. What drew you to Derryfield at this point in your career?
Yeah, so Roxbury Latin was so gracious to me in helping me to grow as a teacher and as a leader. And I've been thinking now for a while that a new challenge and a new opportunity was the right next step for me. Obviously there was a pandemic. Obviously I had a son who was graduating from a school that I currently teach in. And so to be perfectly honest, when Derryfield, the opportunity came up, it was a no-brainer for us as a family and for me as someone who's looking at opportunities like this. I've known about the school for 25 years, thanks to my wife, whom I met 25 years ago, and had heard about this place, had a chance to visit here and meet various iconic figures, some of whom are still here and some of whom have retired at this point. But it was very clear to me that this is a special community. And so when I saw that Mary was, moving on and very happy for her next opportunity, I was very quick to reach out to the search consultants even before they had even published the paper, to sort of, describe the position, to express my interest, and they were excited about that. And then subsequently, just learning about all the wonderful things that are happening here, the innovation, the growth, the wonderful work that Mary and the faculty and the Board of Trustees have done. It's just a wonderful community that seems absolutely headed in the right direction, and I was really excited to have an opportunity to express my interest in that, and here I am. I'm very fortunate to have this opportunity and looking forward to it.
That's great. We're really lucky to have you, and you do. Well, I understand that even though you and I grew up in slightly different parts of the country, we have some things in common. And one of the things that I love about Kansas City, where I grew up, is that even though it's a mid-sized city, it has a real small town feel. And people always joke that when you go to the store in Kansas City, there's never a quick trip because there's lots of conversation and lots of catching up to do with everyone in the aisles. So I understand you had a similar kind of growing up.
I did. So I grew up in Madison, Virginia, not the Midwest, but it was a small town, one stoplight town, if you will. I think it has 3 stoplights now. There's not a whole lot there. One of the iconic places is the Pig and Steak restaurant, which I like to tell people about. But it was such a wonderful community to grow up in. View of the Blue Ridge Mountains, lots of outdoors opportunities to hike and to spend time in nature. And really just a wonderful community. Everyone knew each other, everyone supported each other in the various things that people were up to. A real strong sense of supporting one another and making sure that people had what they need. My mom still lives in that small town, and I think is one little example you just described there. When she would come to Boston and go to the supermarket, go to the grocery store, she would always come home and say, oh, I can't stand it at these grocery stores. Well, why, Mom? You can't find the cereal or something? Or it was, no one will talk to me. Because when she goes to the store, she's there for an hour and a half talking to anyone who will possibly talk to her. So I will say she's happy that we're moving to a place that's not quite as urban as Boston and a little friendlier. So yeah, it was a wonderful place to grow up.
It sounds like it. It sounds like it. Would you share with us a story from your growing up about a coach or a teacher who inspired you or made a difference in your life?
It's such a hard question because there were so many people, and I'll rattle off a few and then I'll land on one. My 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Province, was really important for me as an early reader. I didn't love to read, and she was the mother of one of my really good friends, and she met with me every Sunday afternoon and really fostered a love of reading for me. In high school, middle school and high school, I had some wonderful, wonderful teachers that, when I think back to the influence that they had on me as teachers, I'm really thankful for that. But I would say in college, interestingly enough, which doesn't always happen for people, I really realized what it meant to teach in a holistic way. And as a religious studies major, I took an Islam class. And Professor Sachedina was his name. The very first day of class, it was a room similar to this, about 45 seats or so. And you entered through the back door, and I was a little shy in those days and trying to figure out where I was going to fit into this class. And on the first day of class, I sort of showed up at the last minute, was at the back of the door, back of the room. And Professor Sachedina spotted me right away and not only knew my name, which I still to this day have no idea how he knew my name. I went to a large public university, University of Virginia. But he said, Andy, there's some seats up front here. I was hoping I could just sort of hang out in the back and not be up front. And at that point, I'm exposed, right? I got to come forward, so I walk up front. And he said, and by the way, the closer you are to the teacher, the closer you are to heaven, he told me. So I sat in the front row, and he and I developed a wonderful friendship, as did many other students in the class. But what I really, really loved about him is that A, he understood that teaching was relational, and he built that relationship with me on day one, in some sense embarrassing me, but reminding me how important it was to be near the teacher. But he also was incredibly innovative in the sense that he really was about experiences. We read very dense history books about the history of Islam, but we also spent time in Washington, D.C. at a whirling dervish performance and eating authentic cuisine of the Middle East. And just he was really, really wanting to make sure that we understood what it meant to be Muslim, what it meant to be from the Middle East. And that really made an impact on me as a teacher, that it's not just what you do in the classroom, but it's what you can do beyond that classroom to make an impact on students. So I would really point him out as that influential person for me.
Yeah, he sounds wonderful. He sounds wonderful. And I understand you've also been a coach. And tell us a little bit about that. And what has coaching taught you as opposed to teaching, or has it been similar?
It's a great question. So I just came off the baseball field this afternoon. I'm currently an assistant coach of varsity baseball at my school, which I love. I love coaching baseball. I see coaching as an extension of teaching. I think the two are connected. I think the idea that you could be teaching, in my case, a student Latin earlier in the day, and then have that same student on a soccer or baseball field later in the day, teaching them different skills, but seeing different strengths in those students as they learn a different game. And one's a language, they're all languages to some extent, learning the language of baseball, how to play it effectively, how to motivate them to reach their best. So I really see coaching as an extension of teaching and an opportunity to see young people in different settings and see their strengths play out. So we can all imagine that someone who might be really good on a baseball field might not be so good in the Latin classroom, but as a teacher, having both of those experiences, being able to draw on the strengths of that student and to understand that student in a more holistic way has been really important to my work as a teacher. And I think is something that I know Derryfield teachers do as well, that idea of whether it's coaching or directing a play or helping students with music, just being able to see kids in different settings and being able to work with them and see their strengths and weaknesses and how you can motivate them to get better. So.
Yeah, it really makes a difference. It builds trust and relationship in so many different ways. It really does. So here's a question. Here are a couple of questions that have come from us from our school council and other students. So really important, how do you spend your free time? Are you a mountain person, are you a lake person, or are you a woods person?
How do I spend my free time? And I'll come back to the last question, or maybe I'll start with the last question. I grew up in the mountains, but I'm very much an ocean person. We spend a lot of time on the coast of Maine, where you may hear later some history here, where Kate's family built a small little summer cottage on Pimlico Point, which is really home for our family as well and our kids, where we like to spend time on the water, swimming and fishing and kayaking and all kinds of other wonderful things. So I'll start with that. That's really our place where we can spend time together and relax and enjoy ourselves. Beyond that, I love to cycle and play racket sports and golf, and anything really active is fun for me. I love to read. I read every day, and obviously when I have more time on my hands, I read more than just half an hour every day, but I love to read fiction and nonfiction, and I hear there'll be a book question maybe later, so we can get into that in a little bit.
You're being interviewed by an English teacher. There's definitely going to be a book question.
Those are the keen ways. We also love, when we can, to non-pandemic style, get out into the city where we live and enjoy wonderful restaurants and see shows and experience that as well. So music is a big part of our experience. We love listening to all kinds of music. I will say we're traditionally country music fans to some extent, but we love all kinds of music, and having the opportunity to see live music in person is wonderful.
Sounds like it. It sounds like it. We're going to shift gears a little bit now and talk a little bit about Derryfield. So over the last 5 years, Derryfield has been transformed, as you all know. We introduced our new academic vision that included 13 new 13 new advanced topic courses as we moved away from APs, new exploration courses, new lead classes. We built these 2 new beautiful buildings, and we also introduced a new schedule, and then COVID hit. So I think we're all curious about, after this time of tremendous change, sort of what's next?
What's next?
What's next?
I'm sure everybody, I hope there's not too much that's next. It's such a fun time, isn't it? Because it's, I think, it's a moment where, on one level, we need to all make sure we're taking care of ourselves, and so I think first and foremost, as I come to this community, it's making sure that people are well cared for, faculty, staff, students, parents, etc. I think we all know this has been a really difficult few years, head of school, right? And so I think that is, you can't do anything until you take care of yourselves. It's the old putting the oxygen mask on first before you can help your child. And so I think that's number one. Number two, one of the things that really drew me here, as we were talking about earlier, is how much innovation has happened here. And I hope parents understand, from my perspective, and I work not only at my own school, but have insight into lots of other schools through my work with the PEN program, which some of you may know about, but is a fellowship program that involves 12 other day schools. I can't think of too many other schools who've been as ambitious as Derryfield has been in the last 5 years. And for me, that's exciting. I want you to know, like that, it's exciting to know that people here are not afraid of leaning in and making wonderful changes for, that are student-centered. And so, much of what I've heard during my time through the interview process, and I've been back for a few days to visit with faculty, staff, and students, is the need to really sort of assess where we are and to implement, what's left to implement, but to really think about, what's been done, how that can maybe be refined, how that can be improved, but I don't think anyone's looking to completely revamp everything that's been done in the last 5 years, and nor should they. There's so many exciting things. The fact that you've moved away from APs into advanced topics classes, thank goodness, right? To have to come into a school and do that is a difficult thing, and it's really wonderful to know that you've done that, because I believe every school should do that. My school still has not done that. It's been very difficult to move on from that for different reasons. So my response is taking care of people. Number two, I think really looking at the wonderful work that's been done and thinking about how to refine and revise and to support that moving forward. What's so impressive to me is a real balance of tradition, which your school has, almost 60 years of tradition, and at the same time, wonderful innovation and entrepreneurship. And I think there's a lot of great opportunity here as a school to continue to build on that and to iterate off that and to think about what's next for your students, your kids. So it's exciting.
As we were talking about the other day, we're also heading into NEASC,
Correct.
which to your point is going to give us a great time for some reflection and an evaluation of all of this change.
That's absolutely right. And as Lindley knows, I was just on a NEASC visiting committee at a school in Rhode Island, Moses Brown. I don't think there's any problem with me saying that, which really gave me wonderful insight into a reminder of that process, how it is an important reflective process. And I agree with you. I think, back to the refinement, I think before you can refine, you really have to reflect. And I look forward to reflecting with members of this community and thinking about what's worked, what maybe could be better, and moving from there. And the NEASC review will certainly give all of us that opportunity to reflect and to think about what those next steps are. It's a wonderful process, and one which, again, just finished writing as a team a 50-page report in response to their 100-page report reflecting on themselves as a school. And for those of you who don't know about NEASC, it's really an opportunity for a school to express to the committee what it is that they do, and the committee's job is to come in and look closely and analyze, are you really doing what you say that you do? It's not to get into the weeds so much as it is more holistically to think about what you're doing as a school and how you can improve in that way.
Yeah, the timing is really wonderful in terms of you're coming new at a time when we're telling our story, so it's going to be a great way for us all to get to know each other.
Yep.
You were just talking about your affiliation with the Penn Fellows Program, and I would love for you to just tell us a little bit about that program and how it's helped to build your understanding of what excellent teaching looks like.
Sure. So the Penn Fellows Program, for those of you who don't know, is a program that various day-end boarding schools have a partnership with the University of Pennsylvania's Graduate School of Education, where they offer to young teachers, typically, although they can be in their 30s as well, but usually young teachers who are typically coming out of college, a chance to work for 2 years in a school like Derryfield, for instance, and then at the same time to take coursework through the Penn's Graduate School of Education. And the way that it works is that a school like Roxbury Latin, for instance, hires the fellows, then they apply to Penn. There's a little bit of a, if we hire them, they'll basically admit them to the school kind of deal. They do some pre-screening, I will say, but it's really an opportunity for young people to learn how to teach theoretically as well as practically. And so as a school, my job as director of the program is to make sure that we have training for them and mentorship for them within the school. And then 4 times during the year, we're traveling either to the University of Pennsylvania or a partner school. We were just in New York City a couple weeks ago where they're in class and they're thinking about what excellent teaching looks like. So for me, this has been really transformational in the last 6 years as someone who wishes he would have had a program like this when he was in his 20s and really learning how to teach. I had wonderful mentors in my school. They didn't really have the theory behind that. And the resources, both the Penn professors as well as people like myself at other schools teaching I'm an adjunct professor essentially at Penn as a result of this. That opportunity for us to work together, collaborate together, and to be working with young, really inspiring teachers who are so excited to learn how to teach and bouncing new and innovative ideas off one another. We use a curriculum that is wonderful and one which we're constantly iterating and transforming, but it's really that opportunity to think about wonderful techniques which I know Derryfield's been involved in, backwards design, class learning, as well as just different learning strategies and ways in which for teachers to produce effective classes and curriculum. So it's been a wonderful opportunity for me, not only to be involved with Penn, but also to be involved with those other schools around the country who are involved in the program.
It's interesting, in the news that we're all seeing is that in part, largely due to COVID, we're seeing teachers beginning to leave education. And this is just something we're all thinking about because Derryfield has had such a tremendous history of attracting and retaining excellent teachers. And we've also had this wonderful partnership with the Breakthrough Program, which attracts teachers and is nationally renowned for training teachers so well. So one of the things that's on our minds is sort of how do we continue to attract teachers in the way that we have in the past?
Yeah, it's an important question that every school, for those who are not aware, right, the Great Resignation, which is not just in education, it's in healthcare as well and in some other sectors, is a challenge. You know, it's something that I think is a wonderful opportunity because of the partnership with Breakthrough and possibly other partnerships to really think about how to inspire young people to get into the teaching profession. I think so much of that has to do with making sure they're supported, that they're given lots of feedback. I think there's some generational differences here in teaching where, you know, I think I know for a fact younger teachers are really hungry for feedback and mentorship and greater education. That's not to say that those of us who are on the other end aren't, but they're even hungrier for that. And I think there are wonderful opportunities as schools to make sure that they have the support that they need in order to be effective teachers and to stay as effective teachers. But to me, I think what Derryfield has, which is something that I think you all recognize, is a wonderful sense of community. And I know from my own experience, being a part of a school that has such a strong sense of community, that is almost more important than all those other things that I just talked about. I think when people feel that they are part of something that is moving in the right direction, that has, as you all talk about, purpose and passion, and really you know, can see themselves in that, I think that is a key element to not only attracting people here, but also retaining them and making sure that they feel ready for that next opportunity to grow and to mature as an educator.
And sort of building on that, we're also known for being what I would call entrepreneurial in spirit. And you can see it in so many ways in the partnerships that our teachers build in community organizations, helping to bring the community into the classroom and the classroom into the community and in our service. And it's something we're really proud of, and our teachers also show that kind of entrepreneurial spirit and just their agility and a willingness to adapt. And I'm just curious about, you know, what do you see as the value of that entrepreneurial approach, and how might you integrate that approach into your own leadership?
I mean, I think it's critical. I don't know that every single educator believes in that entrepreneurial spirit, and again, this is what attracts me to Derryfield, that is ingrained in the way in which teachers here and leadership here have really envisioned sort of the next step for the school. So, I mean, this is something I think about all the time, whether it's, you know, in the classroom on a playing field or just, you know, in a leadership way. How does that entrepreneurial spirit, again, honor the tradition that's been here for a long time and people are really proud of? And I, again, have a wife who's a graduate, class of 1993, who remembers certain elements of this experience that were critical to what, you know, she experienced here, while at the same time really thinking about how to iterate off that tradition. And this has been a big part of the work that I've done at a school that's 377 years old, right? To think about what is true and good about that place, and yet it's 2022, and it's time for us to think differently about what students need and how we can help them get to that next place. So for me, it's, you know, in terms of just thinking of entrepreneurship, it's making sure that there's connection with entrepreneurs, first of all. I think, you know, one of the programs that I run currently is a program called RL at Work, where we make sure that we're connecting with entrepreneurs and really trying to get into their mindset as entrepreneurs, as they're developing new ideas and new products and things like that. It's been really powerful for our students to see just the thought process, the design process, the fact that empathy is a real important piece of that entrepreneurship, I think is again, something that I know is centered in the Derryfield tradition of being student-centered and thinking about what that next step is. So it's, again, I think an exciting part of this opportunity, and it's been an important part of what, you know, I've thought of as my leadership style.
Yeah, yeah. We also spend so much time, we've talked about this, about our teachers are so intrigued by sharing with our students big open-ended questions about the challenges that lie ahead and how we can best prepare them for those things. And so we're always thinking sort of how do we best prepare our students for the future? It's such a big question, it's an exciting question. What are some of the ways you like to tackle that question?
Well, I think first of all, it's recognizing that there is no answer to that question, right? And that it's changing, and I think for some people that is not comforting, but you know, for me it's very comforting, because one of the reasons why I got into education was this idea that I think kids are always coming up with something new and different, and those of us who are in the classroom every day know that that's true, and it's what makes it exciting. No day is the same. And so, you know, when I think about the future, I think there's some things that we can, and Derryfield's addressing them already, that, you know, I think are important for our students to have a sense of the world around them and how they can make an impact on that, the skills around STEM, and yet at the same time balancing that with, again, the tradition and the understanding that we need to be good analytical thinkers, we need to be good public speakers, we need to be able to communicate effectively. So working some of those newer skills that are certainly part of what will make a young person successful in their life, while also recognizing that there are certain core elements to everyone's educational experience that need to be there moving forward. But I answer that question more as, I think there's some things that are known and other things that I think it's really exciting to recognize that we don't have all the answers right now. And I think as a community, being open to the fact that that will change over time. And I think that's what makes it exciting to be a part of a community like this.
You also said something when we were talking the other day about, that I just loved, about sort of the distinction between passion and purpose, and sort of that connection of purpose to service.
Yes. So I not a fully formed thought on this, but the idea that I think typically when we think about passions, we think of them more individualistic, right? I'm passionate about this, or I'm passionate about that. I think the transformation of those individual passions that one has to purpose, which I do see in my own experience as more communal, more service, as Lindley was just talking about, and how you can use those passions to impact those around you. And you know, working with young people for over 25 years now, I mean, I've seen that play out over and over and over again. And so as I was seeing the Derryfield passion and purpose, I was trying to think about, you know, what does that mean? And I'm curious to hear from other people, you know, their thoughts on passion and purpose. But for me, that's the way it's always resonated. You know, I have various individual passions, you have individual passions, but how do we develop that into a purpose that impacts those around us and obviously the community beyond Derryfield that our students will, you know, evolve into and hopefully make a great impact on?
Yeah. Well, there's so much good work that lies ahead. Let's just sort of narrow the view a little bit. How do you imagine approaching this first year?
It's a little bit back to what we were talking about before. I think the opportunity to reflect with people, as we noted before the NEASC evaluation, I think I'm very thankful for that, by the way. Some people would say, oh my goodness, that's a lot of work. And it is a lot of work. And I know the faculty and staff are thinking that's a lot of work. But to be able to reflect with faculty and staff, as well as other members of the community, on what this place is and what people want it to be is a godsend for me, because I don't have to go on that tour necessarily. That tour is already built into the year. And so I'm incredibly thankful for that. I see this first year as a chance to really build relationships, get to know people, build trust. I'm sure there are lots of people who are wondering who I am and what I'm all about, and really listening closely and having an opportunity to hear from all constituencies about what they love about Derryfield, what they hope will get better about Derryfield, and then how we can do that together and to create a vision for what that looks like. That's what I see my first year looking like.
Sounds like a promising first year. That sounds wonderful. Well, we are so lucky to have Kate here with us. Would you want to come up and join us? We'll just pull up another chair. Come on over.
Oh, the chair came apart. Don't grab the handles of the chair, actually. How's that?
Well, Kate, you are a Derryfield alum, and I won't ask you what year you graduated, but you're welcome to share.
I already said
it. Okay, never mind. But what is it like for you as you think about coming back to Derryfield and rejoining this community?
Yeah, it's very exciting. This place, not just for me, for my whole family, has meant so much. And so when this came up, as Andy said, we saw that this was opening. We both just said, oh my gosh, this is almost too good to be true. This is just, what an opportunity to come back and join this community. And so for me, I started here when I was 7. I like to tell people that. My dad was the head of Derryfield for 12 years, and so when I was 7, I got to be little kid on the big kid campus, and I got to know lots of people, students, faculty, and then I got to go here for 6 years. So for me, this is home. This is where I grew up. When I think about my most meaningful and impactful educational experience, it's here. A lot of people will say it's college or it's graduate school, which I enjoyed both of those things, but neither compared to my experience here as a student in this place. So it's really exciting to be back and to have that opportunity to see the new Derryfield. I mean, it's my 30th reunion is next year, so a lot has changed, and it's been exciting to read through and listen and get to know all the newness with Andy as we've gone through this process. So, but it's just wonderful to be back.
Yeah, that's going to be, I know, a favorite question for students for you about what's changed. What's changed?
This wasn't here. A lot of physical changes.
Well, would you be open to sharing some stories with us about your Derryfield time, a favorite story or two?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll start broad and then kind of work my way in. I took advantage of basically everything that Derryfield had to offer, and I saw that as that's what I should do. That's what it means to be in a school like Derryfield. And I will say that probably there was a little bit of self-imposed pressure on me being the head's daughter. So that's definitely something that we're thinking about as we have our daughter join this community as a junior next year. But mostly we're really excited that she'll have that opportunity to be in the same school with Andy. I loved having my dad as the head, and I know not everybody would say that. My brother, who graduated a year ahead of me, we had completely different MOs with my dad. And my brother said, Dad, if we're walking down the hallway together, if I eyeball you, that means we can say hello, or high five, or whatever. And
we can relate to that.
If no eyeball happens, just keep walking. We don't know each other. We'll pass through the night. And that was the latter happened more often than the former. And that was the way they handled their relationship here and being in the same place, and it worked for them. I, on the other hand, I could see my dad 100 yards away, running down the hallway, screaming, jump into his arms, big hug, and we'd talk about our day, and that probably happened 5 times a day. So, and that worked for us, and that was just who we were. But I played 3 sports. I was in every play that was offered. I absolutely loved my time in the theater, and to go from the classroom to the athletic field to the theater, I just feel like I knew this place as well as I could know it. I just, was dabbling in all aspects. The only place I didn't find any success in is art, and I'm not an artist, and I knew that, and that's fine. I tried my best, but
everyone's an artist.
Yes.
Just not you.
Yeah, it didn't work. My self-portrait that I kept for a very long time with Mrs. Steele in art class. I finally got rid of that. I realized it really wasn't very good. But it's okay. I'm over that.
But Jan would have encouraged you anyway.
She did. She absolutely did. She was amazing. I think my favorite times, my most memorable times, if I think back about what this place meant and means to me, and Andy talked a lot about it, is by the people, the connections, the relationships. I had amazing teachers here. I had amazing coaches. I had an amazing advisor. David Haight was my advisor all throughout high school. For those of you that know David, he's among the most caring people I've ever met. And it's just that feeling of walking into his classroom and knowing that the second I stepped in, he was, dialed into what I needed and what I wanted to talk about and how he could help me. That, you don't find that everywhere. And that stayed with me forever, very much shaped who I was and who I wanted to be and what I wanted to do with my career. And then I have to say the athletics here were phenomenal. During the time that I was here, my dad and I talked about this all the time. I don't think there's a group of women athletes who were more talented, committed, dedicated, inspiring than the group of women that were here sort of 2-3 years ahead of me and through my class, and it was such fun to be a part of that time. Our soccer team was winning state championships. My basketball team, when I was a sophomore, went to the state finals, and we lost by 4, which is heartbreaking. And I still remember, I remember almost every second of that game, and I talk about it a lot. And but the people that I was playing with, we were a team, and we were so committed to helping each other in our, in our common pursuit. So, but
He tells you it's not competitive though. Just
we joke too. So my dad is probably the most competitive person that either one of us knows, and well, I am his daughter. So, yeah.
We love that.
Yeah. But it all goes back to the people and the relationships here, and we've kept in touch with many a Derryfield faculty member. In fact, I just saw Bruce Burke the other day at a game. Bruce was here probably 40 years, 35, 40 years as a history teacher, and I absolutely detested history, but I loved Bruce Burke, and that's again was kind of like, that's impressive, because I think a lot of people shy away from something that you don't necessarily like or you're not very good at, but it didn't matter. He's Bruce Burke, and he's an amazing human being, and so anyway, really excited to be back.
And I would say one thing, Lindley, that I didn't say earlier that I wanted to say is that, having heard that from Kate, different people that had made such an impression on her, I was curious, when I came here to visit and met lots of teachers, and then again, when I was fortunate to get the job and spend more time with teachers, how impressive this crop of Derryfield teachers are. I mean, some of the people that obviously Kate is mentioning are not here anymore, but that tradition has been passed on, right? That people clearly care about the students that they're working with. I'm not going to name names, because if I start naming names, then someone else will be name their name. But I can tell you, I mean, this faculty is so impressive, and I've so enjoyed getting to know them and hearing how passionate they are about their subjects, but also just the kids that they're working with, and that's come through time and time again. And I haven't even talked to everyone, but I get the sense that people really care about each student that they're working with and are so passionate about the work that they're doing. And that's in the midst of a pandemic and all the other chaos that's going on, which I think is a testament to this faculty. So it's wonderful to see that that's still true, I guess, as well.
It really is. And one of the people who you'll remember, Dennis Holland, when he came back from a health incident, actually proposed to the school that we add caring as one of our core values, as you all know. And we really do try to live by it, and absolutely.
I just have to say one quick thing about Dennis Holland. So I loved math. Math was my thing, and I took every math course that Derryfield had to offer back in the late 80s, early 90s, which meant that I had Dennis Holland for almost all of my high school classes. And there's no better teacher that I've ever had at any institution than Dennis Holland, and just being able to come in every morning, he's sitting doing his crossword puzzles at his desk, probably had been here since 4 in the morning after he ran 10 miles at 3 in the morning. Just what an amazing human being. And I credit him literally singularly for, I became a math teacher and because of him.
That's
So,
wonderful.
huge
That's
impact
wonderful.
on me.
Well, and I understand that you two are also a family of educators and that you're also still working in education.
Yeah, so Andy and I met teaching at Roxbury Latin, actually our first year, both right out of college. And obviously my dad was the head of school here and then went on to be the head of 2 schools after this. So education is certainly in the blood, as Andy was saying, with his family too. And so I taught and coached for over 20 years at Roxbury Latin, and then I switched gears to go into medical education. Where I am now, I am the education manager for the emergency medicine program at the residency program at Mass General Hospital and Brigham and Women's. So different, certainly, being in a hospital setting than a school setting. But there are a lot of similarities. And I think education, no matter where you are, it just shares a lot of commonalities. People need support. People need mentors. People are looking to build relationships. Whether it's because they're then going to go into the ED to try to save somebody's life, or just to go into battle on the lacrosse field, that afternoon. It's people need to develop trust and support, and I'm really fortunate to be able to be a part of that, of this new community that I've gotten to know. And what a time to be involved in emergency medicine. I started. And then 6 months later, COVID hit, and the world kind of was turned upside down. In the emergency medicine world in particular, obviously they're on the front lines every day, and I'm very fortunate to be supporting an amazing group of residents at Mass General and Brigham and Women's. They're truly fantastic human beings, and so I've been able to see a different side of education, and I knew nothing really about the medical world before doing this, but my education background was I think what brought us together, and so there's a lot of education going on every day in that world, and just again glad to be a part of that and building those kinds of relationships in a different setting, but a lot of similarities.
And you all also just made a pivot too, I think, to being home and Zooming into work.
Yeah, so again, I luckily was able to work from home for the vast majority of the last couple of years. Obviously, the residents I'm supporting are not. They're in the ED every day, and so part of me feels guilty for being at home while they're doing this really difficult work. But my role is to support them in however I can, and so I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that remotely. And so, yeah, one of the things I think this pandemic has taught us is that we can do a lot in a different way, and we can adjust and pivot when we need to, and that's been, I think, eye-opening. And there are lots of changes that we've made in the program. There are lots of changes in the whole graduate medical education world that have changed because of the pandemic and the way we do things. And I think, honestly, some are for the better. So we've discovered that too. But I'm lucky to be at home and to be able to support Andy and our kids through, our son was a junior and senior during the height of the pandemic in high school. And that was a really difficult time. And I'm very happy that I could be kind of, at home and changing my schedule and adjusting my schedule as needed to support my family and the residents at the same time. So.
Yeah. Well, we are so glad you're here. We're so glad you're here, and we have just 2 very important questions for you. So, are you ready? So,
Okay.
One is the English teacher question. And oftentimes when we do this on stage, the kids each have a whiteboard, and they sit back to back, and they have to guess each other's favorite whatever it is and write it on the whiteboard.
Do you
I
want us to
won't
go
do
back
that
to
to you
back?
tonight. I won't do that to you tonight. We can be adults and face forward. But each of you is going to be asked to share what is one of your spouse's favorite books or favorite movies.
You want me to go first? I'll go first.
Because
might
we
say
know
the
we're
same
going to say the
thing.
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I know what you're
So I'll
going
go
to say.
first. Kate's favorite book absolutely is The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. She likes, I do too, actually. It's one of my favorite books as well. The Great Alone.
The Great
Alone.
Alone.
Great Alone is another one we really liked. What would you say about me?
Well, I was going to say The Nightingale, so
Well,
that's not fair.
We have many. So again, we read a lot. We have a lot of books that we like.
We do.
Would you like me to?
But I'm
say
terrible
more?
at titles. I probably finish a book every 2-3 weeks, and then, one goes in one ear and out the other, and I can't remember the names of them after I read them, but,
Another one, All the Light We Cannot See was another one. I mean, so both, I don't know why World War II, but it just
yeah.
books that we really enjoy. But
Actually, there's one book that, this isn't about you necessarily, but that actually the head of the program at Mass General recommended to me. It's called A Little Life. And it's, I knew nothing about it before he mentioned that to me. I just wrote it down. I said, oh, I'm going to read that. And it's among the most amazing books I've ever read. I don't know if anyone in here has read that, but it's a story about a gay male in New York City and sort of growing up and going through fighting through a lot of adversity, and just the story of, again, his relationships with people and how they changed based on his sexuality, and just an amazing story about this really courageous character. And I will say, we read books and we talk a lot about the characters, and then again you pick up another book and you're like, wait, who was the main character? Now that's the main character, and you're trying to put them all. And in this book, I could tell you everything about every character, and it was one of those books that just stays with you.
Oh, I love those kinds of books. I love that. How about your favorite movies?
Funny movie story. So when I don't even think we were married, we went to Martha's Vineyard in January, which I highly recommend, by the way. Highly recommend. There's nobody there except the locals. You can actually stay in the nicest bed and breakfast on the ocean and have the ocean at your doorstep, which you really can't do. But you have a lovely fireplace in your little bed and breakfast. But we went and saw the Titanic at Martha's Vineyard. And it's I'm not saying it's one of our favorite movies. I know, they were laughing at us. It's not one of our favorite. It is a good movie. But it was one of those, I remember that movie because I remember being in, it was just more of a setting kind of thing than anything. What would you say my favorite movie is?
Your favorite movie?
I know.
I mean, we both, I think I mentioned this before, I mean, a movie that I like and we both have liked is Good Will Hunting. Just
classic
for
Boston
all the,
movie.
Boston and just the characters in it. I don't know if there's something in particular. We watch a lot of shows,
we're not super big movie
Netflix
people.
and things like that,
In fact, our kids joke with us that we never made them watch movies, so they're not really into movies now.
They wouldn't watch movies.
We tried, but they didn't want to sit there and watch them. So,
Well, thank you. Thank you for all those good suggestions. We're all making notes. And now the most important question of the evening, are you ready? Which is, everyone wants to know, will you be a maroon or will you be a white?
So I need some clarification. So I need some clarification on this because I was under the impression that if a family member was one color, you had no choice. But it seems to be an insinuation that I might have a choice here. Then, Kate, you can answer the question because I have no choice here.
we are maroon.
Well, thank you both for being here and joining us. And we're so excited to have you join us in July. And we're going to have so many opportunities to get to know each other well over the ensuing years. And we just can't wait. So thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Thank you.